embarrassed. Our intelligence was placed at risk. Operators in the field were exposed, some even harmed, because contractors let it get out of hand. Look at national defense. We see some of the same things. Some of the most embarrassing episodes that we've had have been with security contractors in national defense. We were told, hey, you don't have time for that. We don't have the budget for that. We can do this more efficiently. You don't need to do this. And yet, some of the most black eye moments have been with contractors. Well, what about on the administrative side? That would make sense. I see my colleague, Representative Ted Lieu, here. He and I have been very frustrated in seeing some of these types of decisions being made with contracting. The Office of Personnel Management. Hey, let's take this away from the Department of Defense and let's move all of these classified personnel records and we'll have a clearinghouse and we can contract that. Everything will be good. You don't have to devote time and treasure to do this. And yet 25 million exposed records later of those that held security clearances, Mr. Lieu and I both receiving a letter in the mail saying that we had been exposed because we held top secret clearances in the military. And yet, when we made these decisions, we said this would be really good if we move this to contracting. It'll be more efficient, it'll save us money, and it'll be just as good. Well, that was not the case. And so now that takes us to national aerospace. What are we talking about here? Tens of thousands of aircraft in the air, in flights every single day. And if it's so broken a system, when was the last time a major fatal airline crash happened? Can't remember? You'd have to go back a ways, which I'll cover in a moment. But let's stick with this national security concerns. H.R. 2997 diminishes the power of the president, takes away Title I authority, does not replace it with any other congressional controls. Sure, it has congressional review for fee changes or rulemaking, but nothing else. And it transfers Department of Defense, Intelligence, Homeland Security, Border Security, all of these things, and it places them under a coordination with a private entity, and they assure us, oh, it'll be the same system we have now, everything is going to be just fine. But the problem is a private entity, unlike today, did you know every air traffic controller in an air traffic control tower takes an oath of office to support and defend the Constitution of the United States? Most people didn't even know that, to include those that crafted H.R. 2997. They take an oath of office to be a United States citizen. Why? Because it's vital to our national security. Now we want to change that because it's efficient and it's a broken, archaic system. Well, we're all about modernizing. That's common ground we can all agree on. We need to modernize, but we do not need to go the direction that H.R. 2997 has, this AIR Act. And my issues with the bill is purely on policy. There are excellent people that have worked this issue for a number of years. They have the right motives and the right reasons for approaching this issue. But when it comes to national security, we also have a constitutional and moral requirement to support and defend our great republic. And here's where some of that is put at risk. Let me enumerate a few of them for you. Air traffic controllers and managers who work in air traffic control facilities across the country are routinely involved in operations that deal directly with national security of the United States. How so? Well, most Americans, to include members of Congress, are not even aware of this facet of their work. For instance, prior to the beginning of Operation Enduring Freedom, this is a true story, an FAA supervisor placed a number of flight plans in front of an air traffic controller in Kansas City. Those flight plans were for B-2 stealth bombers that were about to depart from Whiteman Air Force Base, fly across the Atlantic, and drop their bombs in Afghanistan, opening the rounds of our response to 9/11. And then they would come back to Whiteman Base in Missouri. Now, if you and I were sitting on the tarmac in the Kansas City airport and looking outside, and we'd say, wow, what's the holdup? Totally oblivious. But yet this is important work. And their mission was obviously classified at that time, but it was U.S. government air traffic controllers, not private contractors, not private company citizens, controllers and managers working these aircraft in U.S. airspace many hours prior to the start of the armed conflict. Every time Air Force One takes off from Joint Base Andrews outside Washington, D.C., carrying very important people, to include the President of the United States, it is an FAA U.S. government air traffic controller clearing that aircraft for takeoff. Not just clearing it, then it's a FAA U.S. government air traffic controller and manager who ensure the security of the airspace flown by the world's most famous symbol of freedom, the shiny blue and white Boeing 747 used by Air Force One and Two as a secure way to transport our President, our Vice President, other officials, as they are called and closely monitored by the FAA and other air traffic controllers and managers anytime Air Force One or Marine One aircraft are airborne. These are operations that go unseen. Many of them and the aspects of them are obviously classified that we could never go into here. But they're vital to our security. They should not be put in a private corporation's hands where there's no oversight and no control. The FAA air traffic controllers and managers routinely provide airspace security, sometimes for hours on end, at locations across the country as the FBI or state and local law enforcement performs classified missions using government aircraft. In some cases, not even other aircraft know about those missions or what it is that they're conducting, depending upon the sensitivity of what it is that they're doing or is being performed. U.S. air traffic controllers, government employees, and managers also participate in drug interdiction operations with Drug Enforcement Administration as well as Customs and Border Protection. And this might involve providing intercept vectors due to drug aircraft, drug lords trying to sneak things in or whatever it might be, and that has to alter flight plans and do very complicated things. It might also involve protecting the airspace for drone operations. Many people are unaware that the FAA U.S. government-employed air traffic controllers and managers are also responsible for military flights, not just the kind that I described at our bases and airports, but this includes special use airspace that maybe has been delegated to the United States in other countries, or to do flight training, refueling, attack and bombing missions. And this same government-employed air traffic controllers and managers are responsible for military aircraft on secret missions, to include drones and drone killers. They're responsible for the aircraft of military uses to communicate with our nuclear infrastructure so that if we have to, God forbid, defend the Republic in that manner, they're right there in that loop of that system, not some private company. They're also responsible for the airspace above the areas where our missile defense capacities occur and the testing systems that go on with that. You can see why that handing these coordinations over to a private company might be a little problematic. And then let's look at September 11th, 2001. It was FAA U.S. government air traffic controllers and managers who were responsible for putting over 4,000 aircraft on the ground almost immediately. Very short order after America was attacked by terrorists using planes as weapons, killing 3,000 of our fellow citizens. But it was the rapidity of response because of the way the network is that they were able to make instant decisions, not having to coordinate through some private corporation, that they were able to do so.